Welcome back everyone to another episode of Loreview, where we go over a video game story in depth. In this one, we are going to dive into a game that has regrettably been in my backlog for many years now. Kingdom Come: Deliverance is a medieval open-world RPG, and with the upcoming sequel releasing soon after this video, I figured this would be a useful recollection of the events during the first game, so buckle up and grab some snacks because I have a feeling that this is going to be a long one. Kingdom Come: Deliverance takes place in the Kingdom of Bohemia during the year 1403. The current ruler is King Wenceslaus IV. Now I could go on and tell you about Wenceslaus and the ensuing events leading up to the game, but the game already does it for us, so I'll just run the clip as the narrator has a better voice than mine anyways.
Charles IV, King of Bohemia and Holy Roman Emperor, had a long and successful reign. The empire he ruled from Prague expanded, and his subjects lived in peace and prosperity. When the emperor died, the whole empire mourned. More than 7,000 people accompanied him on his last procession. The heir to the throne of the flourishing empire was Charles's son, Wenceslaus IV, whose father had prepared him for this moment all his life. But Wenceslaus did not take after his father. He neglected affairs of state for more frivolous pursuits. He even failed to turn up for his own coronation as emperor, which did little to endear him to the Pope. Wenceslaus the Idle did not impress the imperial nobility either. His difficulties mounted until the nobles, exasperated by the inaction of their ruler, turned for help to his half-brother, King Sigismund of Hungary. Sigismund decided on a radical solution. He kidnapped the king to force him to abdicate, then took advantage of the ensuing disorder to gain greater power for himself. He invaded Bohemia with a massive army and began pillaging the territories of the king's allies.
There you have it. Although there was peace during Wenceslaus' reign, he was a neglective ruler, and his half-brother nor the Pope liked how he was running things. The difference between the two is that his brother Sigismund actually did something about it. The only reasonable thing to do: kidnap him and begin pillaging his empire. This is where our story as Henry begins in the village of Skalitz. You're shown a cinematic of your mother greeting your father, who is in the middle of forging a sword. Your father asks about where you are, to which your mother replies you're still sleeping in, presumably after a long night of drinking, prompting your father to call you a blue-blooded idler. As you can tell, Henry is just a lazy, poor son of a blacksmith who likes to sleep in. After being summoned to your father, he tells you that he needs a few things to finish the sword that you two have been making together to be given to the Lord of Skalitz, Sir Radzig. Your father tasks you with buying charcoal from the town market, but first you'll need to collect a debt from the man named Kunesh in town in order to buy the charcoal. You'll also need to grab the crossguard for the sword from the chamberlain at the castle, which has just been engraved and delivered from a village called Sasau. Lastly, you'll need to pick up some ale from the tavern on your way back so that it doesn't get warm. Upon arrival to collect the debt from Kunesh, he isn't very receptive to your plight. In fact, if you're not able to persuade him, he'll try to beat you up. It was a long bout of fisticuffs, and since Henry sucks at fighting and it was my first time in combat in the game, it wasn't easy. Nevertheless, after a long-winded victory for Henry, he finally agreed to pay his debt in the form of returning the axe, hammer, and nails that he was indebted to your father for. I promptly sold them to the charcoal burner in exchange for the charcoal and went on to complete the next task of acquiring the crossguard. After talking to the guards at the castle entrance, they'll comment on the craftsmanship of the crossguard and hand it over without any issue. You can now embark on your last task for father, picking up his ale. In front of the tavern, a few men are talking about how King Wenceslaus is failing as king, to which a few of your friends don't take kindly. They offer you to join in throwing feces all over his freshly lime-washed house. You can either join them or don't. Either way, afterwards you'll have to pick up your father's ale, but not before talking to your sweetheart Bianca, who works at the alehouse. When she comes back from grabbing the ale from the cellar, she says that you can pay her back afterwards this evening. and comments on your activities with the brigand Vranik, who has been training you in sword fighting in secret. Now, with the charcoal, crossguard, and ale in tow, you can head back to your father to finish the sword.
Give it here, and we'll put it all together.
It's magnificent.
Indeed it is. The Lord be with you. My father sent me for those nails.
Good day to you, Teresa. They're ready. Will you fetch them for me, Hal? They're in the trunk in the living room.
After fetching the nails for Teresa, you and your father test the sword right before Sir Radzig shows up to check on the sword's progress. Shortly after, something unexpected unfolds.
You still have a lot to learn. Ask your father to show you how. He knows what he's about.
Learning his trade will serve him better in life, sir.
Perhaps. But who knows what the future holds for each of us. I see that you almost have it finished.
It just needs a polish, then Henry will bring it to you.
Excellent. Fine work, very fine. A sword such as this will bring honor to its bearer. What say you, Svan?
True, Sir Radzig. If I'd have had its like back in Nicopolis, things would have worked out differently. How odd to find such an accomplished swordsmith working in a place like this. A man of his talent would have no problem making a fortune in Prague or Vienna.
You're right. It's a very long and peculiar story.
I'd be glad to listen to it over a cup of wine, but duty calls, and I must leave. Here you are. Learn from your father. He truly is a master of his craft.
I'm sure our paths will cross again.
They certainly will.
Once it's ready, send your son up to me with it. Good work, Martin.
Sir.
It's been an honor, Sir Isvan. Have a safe journey to Sasau.
The honor is mine, Sir Radzig. Thank you for the hospitality.
A long, peculiar history. That was a long time ago. I might tell you about it sometime, but not today.
Will you teach me how to use it, like Sir Radzig said?
Why?
Well, it could come in useful. Maybe I'll travel a bit before settling down. I'd like to know more than the tavern on the green and the forge.
You know the trouble with an adventurous life, son? It can end before it gets started. I might teach you how to handle a sword, and then someone will shoot you with a crossbow as soon as you set foot outside the house.
You talk as if you've seen it happen.
A man my age has seen a lot. Being a blacksmith might bring no glory, but it has its benefits, like keeping your head on your shoulders. I want to end my days in Skalitz, here, beneath the linden tree and by your mother's side.
Well, so do I, one day. But first, I'd like to see the world, meet new people.
Meet them or beat them.
Meet. You have to keep going on about it.
Then you've no need to learn swordplay.
A messenger.
He was in a hurry. What's happened?
Sigismund's army has come to pillage Skalitz because of Sir Radzig's allegiance to King Wenceslas. Your father tells you to deliver the sword to Sir Radzig, and that if anything were to happen to him, Sir Radzig will take care of you on account of his debt to your father. Your father is shown to have put up a good fight against the raiders before being slain by one on a horse. Your mother soon follows. It's an emotional moment in the game, but it's short-lived as the raiders spot you and you must run to safety in the castle. You don't quite make it in time, but the guards tell you to find a horse, ride to the nearby village of Talmberg, and warn them of the raid. As you ride towards Talmberg, warning others on the road, the raiders follow behind, shooting at you with arrows. You make it to Talmberg after taking an arrow to the leg, and the castle guard stops the raiders with a volley of their own arrows. After making it safely inside the castle and alerting the guard of what's happened at Skalitz, Captain Robard pulls the arrow from your leg, and you are brought before Lord Divish of Talmberg to tell your tale. Divish tells Captain Robard to make sure you are taken care of and to bring everyone inside in preparations of an attack. You're then taken to the kitchen and introduced to Lord Divish's wife, Lady Stephanie, before being given food and wine and offered a bed in the courtyard lodge. After raiding the kitchen of all its food supplies, you are to rest in the bed offered to you, which will then be interrupted by Lady Stephanie's presence. She brings wine and comforting words, letting you know that you're not alone. During the encounter, she asks you to share your story. Afterwards, she comforts you further by telling you her own tale. She talks about how Divish was once kidnapped by another lord for many years, causing her own feelings of loneliness. As you can probably tell, this can lead to some interesting times between Stephanie and Henry later on, though I'll save the details for your own playthrough. You're awakened by Robard in the middle of the night, telling you that an unknown company of guard has arrived to Talmberg from Skalitz. Once you've arrived at the battlements, the company approaches, which turns out to be none other than Sir Radzig, who explains he has fled Skalitz under the cover of the night storm to make their way to Rattay, a larger castle past Talmberg. He offers Henry to join them in Rattay, though Henry says he must return to Skalitz to bury his parents. Radzig reprimands him for his death wish and tells Lord Divish to keep an eye on you before riding off towards Rattay. Henry then joins the Talmberg guard for a shift of night watch on the battlements before Sigismund's army shows up at Talmberg to parley with Divish. They say that they have arrived to restore order to the king's estates. They explained that they have raided Skalitz due to Radzig's use of the silver from the Skalitz mines to fund an insurrection against the crown in Wenceslas's favor. Divish tells them that they don't know anything about Sir Radzig's whereabouts, and Sigismund's army moves out to continue their search. The next day, Henry tells Robard of his plans to bury his parents, to which he is highly opposed. Either way, Henry escapes the castle to do just that. Arriving at Skalitz, you'll find it in a state of ashes, with bodies strewn about the streets in bloody display. There are bandits and robbers around the village, so you'll need to be careful or fight them in defense. Once you've found your parents, Henry will mourn their deaths before searching for a shovel to bury them. After a bit of looking around, you'll find Zabishek fighting off the butcher's dog with a shovel. After further investigation, it seems he is robbing the dead, and Henry tells him to bugger off. You'll then dig a grave below the linden tree at your house for your parents and run to grab their bodies. Before you can, a group of raiders ambush you, steal the sword that was meant for Sir Radzig, and step over you to finish you off with it. However, before they can finish the job, Teresa shows up with some Rattay guards to run off the raiders. You'll then be carried by cart to Rattay with Teresa before waking up to Teresa explaining to you what happened. She's taken you to her uncle's mill in Rattay after saving you from the raiders in Skalitz and burying your parents for you. You can then gather your belongings and talk to the miller, who explains you owe him for the hospitality he has given you. You can pay him back by completing a mission for him, though I'm going to stick to the main missions for this video. After you've spoken with Sir Radzig, he has taken you under his wing and into his command due to your bravery, and has ordered you to train with his captain Robard. You'll fight with him and he'll teach you the basics of combat. You can also continue to train with him with wooden weapons or real ones in order to learn different fighting mechanics later on, like ripostes, perfect blocks, and combos. After you're done training, you'll have to enter the service of the bailiff in order to become one of Sir Radzig's men. The bailiff sends you on guard duty with Sir Nightingale, the watchman. You'll need to patrol the town, resolving any issues, and then check up on the taverns to make sure that they close before curfew. After solving a few disputes throughout the town, you'll close up the taverns before coming across Lord Capon, the heir and nephew of Sir Hanish, Lord of Rattay. Capon is causing a ruckus at one of the taverns and refuses to leave for curfew.
Come now, sirs. You're not going to fight here, are you?
We most definitely are. This yokel needs to be taught his place.
This will trigger a fight between Henry and Capon, leading to Lord Hanish to interrupt and reprimand you both. Hanish tells Capon that he has to join him tomorrow to settle a dispute among lords as a lesson of him to his duties. Capon responds that he had planned to go hunting. Hannish agrees to allow him, though he must take Henry with him as his page in a lesson of leadership, and a lesson to Henry in how to behave in front of noblemen. Tomorrow morning you meet with Capon, who is not all that happy to have to drag you along, telling you that you'll have to follow him towards his hunting camp on foot while he rides his horse. Along the way, he halfway apologizes for his behavior last night while also telling Henry he must change his own. This is the moment that Capon shows to Henry that he's not all that bad and that he just wants to have a good hunt while they're out. Upon arriving at the camp, Capon will challenge Henry to a hunting competition. Whoever hunts the most hares wins. You'll be given a bow and set off to hunt. Win or lose, either way after the hunt, Capon will meet you back at the camp and tell you to follow him to hunt some real game. You'll both come across a wild boar which Capon shoots with an arrow. The boar falls and Capon boasts right before the boar gets back up and runs off. You'll have to find the boar for him, but instead of the boar you'll come across Capon tied up to a tree at a bandits camp. After fighting off the bandits, Henry and Capon joke together about their adventure as they seem to be bonding following their initial disagreement at the tavern. Arriving back at Rattay, Capon's wounds are tended to while Hannish and Radzig commend Henry for his actions and courage. Radzig agrees to take Henry into his personal service. Henry pours the lords a drink, and soon after, a guard enters the room to alert them of an attack on a stud farm at the nearby village of Neuhof. Hannish orders the guard to send a company of men to investigate while Henry asks to go with them. Radzig agrees, and you'll set off as soon as the men are ready. Once you arrived at Neuhof, you'll encounter the villagers who tell you about the attack. You learn that a group of men came in the night, maimed the horses, killed some of the people living there, and torched the buildings, taking nothing with them, a massacre. After having a look around and asking a few people about the events, Henry learns that the raiders rode off into the woods, offering a lead to follow. Once you've found the trail of the blood they left, you can follow it into the woods and find two men talking, one mortally wounded on the ground. You'll have to fight off one of them and question the other, but before you get the chance to, he bleeds out and dies, spewing off about being bested by a peasant. Searching his corpse, you'll find a bloody hoof pick that once belonged to a man named Ginger, who used to work at the farm. You find that he's known to hang around the charcoal burners' camps, which there are a lot of in the area. After searching all the camps and finding the correct one, you'll come upon Ginger hiding in a cabin in the woods. He tells you that he had nothing to do with the raid, he ran because he didn't want to be killed by the raiders, and that the hoof pick was his, but it was taken from him by a man who lives in Uzhitz and has a limp, giving Henry yet another lead to follow. You go back to tell Robard of all that you found, to which he rips you a new one for being too stalwart and reminds you that you're just a peasant, though he recognizes that it's his duty to train you. After reporting back to Radzig, Radzig will encourage you to follow your trail into Uzhitz while he rides to his encampment at Merhoyed to ensure the security of the region. Now, for the sake of keeping this video relatively concise, I'm going to gloss over the Neuhof investigation as it mostly includes running around the region to find and question different men. Though the investigation does include one of the best missions in the game where you are invited to drink all night with a priest, causing havoc in the village of Uzhitz, leading to the both of you waking up hungover and the priest needing to deliver a sermon, but because he's so hungover, he's unable to deliver it and asks that you do it in his stead.
I thought he'd never show up. The swill dog.
Look at him. He can hardly walk after his capers last night.
You were with them, you beast. Just you wait.
Look at him. Mother of God. Any minute now he'll throw up.
So I couldn't sleep a wink last night with all that clamor.
Brothers and sisters, you may have had the honor of meeting Henry from Skalitz, who is here at the behest of Sir Hanush to investigate that heinous crime at Neuhof. You might not know that Henry recently visited Prague, where, by the grace of God, was able to hear Master Jan Hus from the esteemed Charles University preaching. I've managed to persuade Henry to stand here today in my stead and tell us what he heard. Because, as you all probably know, Jan Hus is a very popular preacher in Prague. So, Henry, you may begin.
Now Curious which one of them will puke first.
Brothers and sisters, let me get straight to the point. I'd like to talk about the church and how corrupt it is.
That boy has a cheek.
It is the corruption of God's pastors here on earth that has brought misfortune on our heads. Plague, humans, hunger, and chaos. The accursed wealth that the church is drowning in is poisoning almost the whole of Christendom. When dogs are fighting over a bone, take the bone and they will stop. Just like the flock of ravens that has descended on this land to peck up every speck of gold and silver. They show no mercy. Their hearts are poisoned by covetousness. They trade everything. Everything is for sale. You want to baptize a child? Pay. You want to steal and murder? Pay, and you will have absolution. And the prelates sin and give themselves absolution.
For shame! Shame upon them!
It is the custom of the gluttonous prelates and monks to preach against sin. But what do they know of us ordinary folk? Let us remember the marriage at Cana, where our Lord Jesus Christ himself feasted with the other guests and drank his fill. And when the wine was gone, he performed a miracle and created more. He, whose companions were poor travellers, simple folk, prostitutes and troublemakers, performed a miracle so the feast could continue.
Now that's the kind of sermon I like to hear.
No, brothers and sisters. Jesus did not condemn alcohol. Drink to lighten the cross you bear in this vale of tears, but not with such abandon that you cannot keep holy the Sabbath. For there should be moderation in all things, and it is not drinking itself that is sinful, but intemperance and beastly indulgence.
He's right.
The lad spoke well, considering what a soak he is.
He's right, Dapples.
The young man shouldn't drink so much, but the Lord's given him a
I'm
silver
glad he
tongue.
came here. I don't suppose I'll ever get to Prague, and he told it nicely.
Well, well, my boy, you have talent, and I can't deny it. And you pulled a thorn from my side. I almost didn't make it.
Yeah, I noticed. Well, I wasn't the only one.
Again, that was one of my favorite missions in the game and stands out as one of the most memorable, as you saw in that clip. Now, as for the investigation into the Neuhof stable attack, Henry travels to the Merhoyed encampment to explain his findings to Sir Radzig. Essentially, as Henry arrived in Ujits to find the Limpy bandit, he found him instead murdered in his house, set up in a bloody display. Henry found out about another fellow named Riki who had deserted the raiders along with Limpy and a few others. Riki told Henry that the raiders were after all of them in order to cover their tracks and that they were all hired by a man named Runt. Radzig is grateful for the information and asks you to do some reconnaissance and sabotage if possible at the bandits' camp while he musters his men. Once you've found the bandits' camp, you've got a few options on how to proceed. You can either find some cumin armor as a disguise, which I didn't know about, or you can stealth your way through the camp, or you can fight everybody there in an unfavorable battle, which is exactly what I did. No matter how you complete it, once you've scouted the camp and sabotaged their supplies, you can report back to Sir Radzig where you'll tell him how many men are at the camp and the camp's layout. He says that the camp sounds like an old ruined village called Pribyslavitz. After informing Radzig about how many men are at the camp and that there are humans, not just bandits there, he says that you'll need a lot more men to take them out. He then sends you off to Talmberg to ask Sir Divish to send Captain Robard and his men and to ask Hanish to do the same. Robard will set off with you to meet Radzig and his men in the woods near the bandit camp. Once you and Radzig put together a plan, he decides on advancing through the front of the camp in a forward offense. As soon as you reach the camp, you'll be met with heavy resistance and will have to fight your way alongside the guards up to the inner camp where you spot the man who took your sword, Runt. Runt then flees into the church building. Henry quickly follows him into the church and up a ladder to confront him. A fight ensues, ending with Henry brutalizing Runt's face on the rafter floor. Radzig and Robard interrupt. While Radzig is impressed with your performance, they say you're beating a dead horse. Furthermore, they found a trunk of coin below, indicating that someone higher up has been funding and ordering this band of bandits. Upon returning to Ratai, Tobias Fafar, the master engineer of Ratai, delivers to Sir Hanish the trunk of coin from the camp, though it seems the coin is counterfeit. Because the coin is counterfeit, this would mean that there is a counterfeiting scheme funding the bandits' armies, sparking yet another investigation for Henry to get started on. Hanish is visibly upset, mostly about not having a trunk of coin in his possession, but Sir Radzig still has his wits and sends you off to question a captive bandit in Merhoyed to find out more about the coin. On your way to Merhoyed, you'll be stopped by a villager leaving the town, warning Henry that the plague has come to the village. Before you can interrogate the prisoner, you'll have to deal with the plague by asking for help at the Sasau monastery. After speaking with Brother Nicodemus, the monastery herbalist, he will ask you to look through the Breviarium de Signis Causa, a manuscript written by Johann of St. Paul to match the symptoms of the recorded cases to figure out what the disease in Merhoyed is. After some reading, talk with Nicodemus again and tell him what you found. He'll tell you to brew up a potion for that specific sickness and meet him in Merhoyed. If you chose the correct sickness and in turn brewed the correct potion, you can cure the prisoner and the villagers of their sickness. However, if you told Nicodemus the wrong sickness by accident, then the affected villagers and the prisoner will die. Either way, you can still progress the mission by looting a letter from his dead body. While interrogating the prisoner, he'll tell you that the man in charge has got plenty of coin, that he's most likely a noble foreigner, and that he is planning more raids. He also notes that the army in Pribyslavitz was made up of several different smaller gangs all brought together for the coin, and mentioned the man that brings the forgery coins to Sasau should be meeting him right about then for an exchange near the village of Ravna, giving Henry another lead to follow. Once you're done with the prisoner, an angry mob of villagers will crowd around the shed and demand the prisoner's life. You can either give him to them or bring him to Radzig to face his judgment. Either way, you'll report to Radzig and tell him what the prisoners told you, which leads you to a moment of recognition between Henry and Sir Radzig.
You haven't disappointed me. Nothing against Bernard, Robert, or any of those others. But none of them could find out as much as you. At least not without beatings and torture. And that doesn't always work. You're a godsend, lad.
Thank you, sir.
Now go and find out who's behind everything, and then we'll deal with them.
Yes, sir. Sir.
What is it?
Sometimes I ask myself what it all means. Why does God allow such things to happen? All this slaughter and revenge, over and over.
It's a hard question. I'm no theologian. But long ago I came to the conclusion that the only thing that makes sense is that it's all a trial. Life is one long series of problems to solve. The more you solve, the better a man you become.
I never thought about it that way.
Well, just look at the pampered ones who have no concerns in life, like young Lord Capon, for instance. I shudder to think how he will rule when his time comes. Tribulations spawn in life over and over again, and we must stand our ground and face them. So, I go to Sasau and solve this one.
You can rely on me, sir.
You're now to go to Ravna and meet up with the man responsible for bringing the counterfeit coin into the kingdom. However, once you arrive at the location, you'll find the wagon carrying the coin has already been raided. Following the trail of blood, you'll come across a charcoal burner camp with another knight looking for the same coin as you. After confronting him, he speeds off on his horse with the sack of coin, triggering a chase sequence. Once you've caught the knight and bested him in swordplay, he will tell you his story. He is a knight that goes only by Ulrich, and that he is not willing to give up his master's name. He tells you that his master has sent him to investigate the same thing as you, and that he even has a written confession telling how the forgeries are made. He can't make out what the letter says as he is not well versed in mechanics, so he asks you to take it to Tobias the engineer so that he may garner more information from it, and then tells you to meet him at the Sasau Inn when you know more. After showing the letter to Tobias, he tells you that the forgeries are copper coins plated in silver, and that they are being made in the town of Sasau. He then sends Henry off to investigate further to hopefully find out what's really going on. Once you've gone to Sasau and done some questioning, you'll eventually find a man named Rapota, who is working for the bandits to make sure that the forgeries are completed. Once you confront him, he'll try to run off until you catch up with him and beat him up. He'll then spill the beans, telling you that the forgery workshop is located in the Skalitz mines on the eastern side of the Skalitz hill, prompting you to travel to Skalitz. Once you've found the correct mine gallery, you'll have to fight your way through it until you find the man behind the forgeries. Yezik of Ranov. You'll have to pass a few persuasion checks, but once you've talked him into it, you can bring him back to Master Fafar in order to have him questioned, while Fafar tells you to return to Ratai once you've rested up. In Ratai, you'll speak with Radzig, who will tell you to get the key to Yezik's prison cell in order to interrogate him yourself. Upon arriving to the cell, Yezik promises to tell you all that he knows if you provide him some assurances that he won't get killed. If you agree, he'll tell you that he was recruited in Sasau by a group of vagabonds to create forgeries for them. Not only that, but there is someone highly placed in the monastery who is involved in the scheme. Lastly, he tells you that a man named Eric is the one who is having the recruitment done in Sasau. After bringing this information to Radzig, you'll then set off to be recruited by these bandits in Sasau yourself in order to gather more information on the whole operation. You'll have to go to Sasau, talk to a few people, and find out that the bandits do the recruiting in the church at night. If you go to the church and pray at the altar at night, you'll be met with a group of bandits who question you and tell you that if you want to join up, you'll have to prove your worth by killing one of the escaped bandits from the Neuhof massacre, named Pius, who has joined the monastery as a monk. They also tell you about a man that hangs around the tavern who is soon to join the monastery. He's a noble who is being forced to join the monastery by his father, and if you can convince him to run away, you'll be able to enter the monastery under the guise of his own identity. Once you've gained access to the monastery, you'll be bound to the monk's schedule, and if you don't follow it, you will have to serve penance, so it's important to either stick to the schedule while conducting your investigation, or not get caught breaking the rules. The monks are given different names from their originals when they join the monastery, so you'll have to do some poking around to find out who Pius is. Once you've talked to a certain monk, Brother Anthony, and have asked him about Pius and why you want him, he'll poison your food at the next meal, and you'll wake up in the dormitory sometime later. He'll comment on your vitality as you survived the potion and will then tell you his story in the form of allegory. He admits to being one of the bandits at Neuhof, but says he murdered no one. He joined the monastery in order to start a new life and asks you to frame his own murder so that he might get away from all this and you'll get what you want. You'll need to do a few things in order to do this, but once you've gotten all the supplies necessary, you'll then frame his murder and both of you escape the monastery going your separate ways. You can then return to the bandits at the agreed meeting place and show them the special die that Pius gave you as proof of his murder. They will initiate you as one of them and tell you to travel to a rundown village named Vranik, where their base of operation is. Once again, you'll report back to Radzig and Hanush to tell them what you know. Henry will tell them that he can infiltrate their base in Vranik since you're one of them now, and Radzig is reluctant as it seems too big of a risk, but eventually agrees in the end. Traveling to Vranik, you'll find a huge camp filled with what looks like hundreds of men surrounded by large timber palisades. Investigating further, you'll be able to meet the man named Eric, who tells you to talk to his combat master to test your mettle. Once you've sufficiently rocked the combat master's world, you can then return to Eric to find him talking to Istvan Toth, the man from the intro of the game who was talking to Sir Radzig as he came to check on the progress of the sword. Istvan has that sword with him and will recognize Henry immediately as one of Sir Radzig's men. Henry lunges for Istvan before being knocked unconscious. Once Henry is tied up, Istvan will wake him up to reveal his whole plan and the biggest plot twist of the game to him.
I apologize for the discomfort, but it's for your own safety. And ours, of course. You can count yourself lucky, lad. I'm gonna keep you alive. I'm sure your father will pay a nice fat ransom for you.
My father's dead. That lackey of yours wouldn't even let me bury him.
He doesn't know, Eric. Nobody told him. They told me, a foreigner, but not him. How very inconsiderate. I'm sure you'd rather hear it under different circumstances and from someone else, boy. But beggars can't be choosers. Your father, your real father, is alive. You even know him. It's your liege lord, Radzig Kobyla. Although, how much can he really care about you? Here you are, a homeless orphan, and he still hasn't acknowledged you. Your parents are both dead, aren't they? I thought so. And yet, Radzig still hasn't told you the truth. Could it be that he's ashamed of you? I wonder if you'll want to pay that ransom after all. Well, best not think about that. If your father won't pay your ransom, you have no value to me.
My father's dead.
I understand why you feel that way. My own childhood was not dissimilar. How strange that we should have something in common. But I've delayed long enough. Now it's time for you to tell me why you came here.
I was looking for my father's sword, which was stolen by a certain bastard.
And I found it. But I wonder which father you mean. In a way, it belongs to both.
Doesn't matter who it belongs to. I'm gonna kill you with it.
You're hardly in a position to threaten me. But now I think of it, why not? When your father, your real father, pays, I'll give you an opportunity to try.
I think that's very generous of you.
Isn't it?
Radzig will crush you, and I'll be there to see it.
I very much doubt it. You spied on our camp. You must realize that your father hasn't a fraction of the forces I've gathered. And now, with the king in captivity, there's no one to levy troops to come to your aid. Even united with Hanush and Divish, your father couldn't raise more men than I have. The only force in this country capable of defeating me is Sigismund's. And he pays me. When he wins, I win. Everything I take now will be mine, and I plan to take everything. So meet the new lord of the realm.
A man like you will never rule here.
Have you never heard of Lord Sokol of Lamberg, or Sahinek the Dry Devil? They fought for your king and plundered the estates of the lords in Austria, just as I'm doing here. Like they say, the stronger dog fucks the bitches. And war is a nasty business.
Sir, it's time.
Now, I'm afraid I have more important business to attend to. I'll leave Udo here to keep you company. And let's hope for both our sakes that your father pays up. Farewell.
Rot in hell!
Knock some manners into him, Udo. Come on, Eric, let's go. We've got work to do.
So Sir Radzig is your father, Istvan is in charge of all the raids in the kingdom, and you are being held for ransom. Luckily, your old pal Zbyszek, the dog murderer, wakes you up so that he can set you free, but only if you vouch for him to Sir Radzig. His plan is simple: untie you and allow you to escape the encampment by yourself. He tells you that there is a pile of literal shit that's almost as high as the camp wall. All you need to do is sneak past all the guards and jump off the wall into the shit. Despite how simple he made it all sound, if you want all of your stuff back, you'll have to first kill a guard, steal a lockpick from them, sneak into Eric's office, lockpick the chest with your stuff, grab it, and then sneak across the camp past several guards and get to the opening on the wall. Once you're outside of the camp, Zbyszek will meet up with you to hold up your end of the bargain. He doesn't have a horse, so you'll both have to trek across the countryside back to Ratai to inform Hanush and Radzig of the events, including Radzig being your father. Once you've arrived, Radzig brushes off the part about him being your father, telling you that you'll both have a talk about it later, and then asks about what happened while you were gone. Once you've spilled the beans, you'll need to once again gather Sir Divish and Captain Robard's men for another attack, but this time at Vranik on a much larger scale. After informing Divish about the plan, you and the men set off to Vranik in preparation for the attack. Radzig, Hanush, Divish, and Robard are all present for the battle. You all put together a plan and decide to attack from the front while a separate detachment attacks from the side, all while raining fire arrows onto their tents, causing mayhem. The ensuing battle is bloody, brutal, and one-sided. With the large number of reinforcements that you've brought with you, it shouldn't be difficult to clear the camp on the first try. All you need to do is enjoy the sound of weapons on armor as you slash your way through the camp. You and your army clear the camp segment by segment until you've reached the house at the top of the base, Eric's office. Unfortunately, you won't be met with either Eric or Istvan, as it seems they've fled. After some investigation, though, you'll find a letter describing Istvan's next move.
Says everything's going according to plan, and the castle should soon be taken.
Castle? What castle? What does he need a castle for?
Sir, we took this one alive. And it seems he's not just some ordinary spear carrier.
Where's that rat Toth? Where did he go? Speak, damn you!
He's thwarted you again, hasn't he?
If you play your cards right, you might come out of this in one piece. Where is your lord? He was here yesterday, wasn't he?
Come now, sir. We both know where I will end up. My lord is gone. He took most of the men and left.
Where has he gone? What is he planning? He writes here about taking some castle. Which castle?
Oh, some nearby castle. Left completely unguarded. Now I wonder where it could be.
What are you saying, you horse son?
Talmberg. Did he go to Talmberg?
You'll never get him! You'll never get...
What? We're planning on sending him to some monastery to become a monk?
Once you've arrived at Talmberg, it's already too late. Istvan and his men have taken the castle and Lady Stephanie with them as a hostage. Some of Istvan's men are still in the outer bay of the castle, allowing Istvan time to escape with Stephanie while you and your men attack. While clearing the bay of Istvan's men, Lord Divish gets shot in the arm with an arrow, and your father Radzig will have been captured in the midst of battle. With the hope of taking Talmberg back through attack being squandered, you and the lords look to other options. Robard suggests sending a few men in at night to scale the castle walls and take back Radzig and Stephanie. Of course, Henry volunteers and begins preparation for the operation. Once you're ready, you, Lord Capon, and a few men will travel at night to scale the walls. After getting inside, you'll have to stealth kill a few guards and sneak into the courtyard house where the hostages should be held. After accessing the house, you'll not find Radzig or Stephanie there, just some villagers being held captive. So you and Capon declare your operation a failure and decide to retreat. However, before you can, Capon gets shot with an arrow and you'll have to carry him out of the castle while the villagers scramble, causing mayhem. Once you've escaped and returned without the hostages, it is clear that Lord Divish is out of options and that he must lay siege to his own castle. They devise a plan to build a trebuchet with the help of Master Fafar in order to lay siege and take back the castle. This begins a sequence of quests that you must carry out in order to lay siege. First, Fafar doesn't even know how to build a trebuchet, so he asks you to request the help of another engineer, Conrad Kieser. He is located in Sasau and is unfortunately currently preoccupied helping out with the building of the church, so you'll have to figure out a way to get him free of that. There are a few ways to do this, but I just stole his foreman's money out of his pockets and then blackmailed the foreman to allow Conrad to leave and help with the trebuchet. After you've convinced Conrad to join you in the siege of Talmberg, you can meet him back at the camp to begin the trebuchet's construction, and he'll fill you in on his obsession of a weapon called Roquetta.
And I can supply, for example, Roquetta to sweep the foe from the battlements.
Roquetta? I do not believe I've heard of such a term.
Roquetta are missiles filled with black powder with a touch hole at the bottom to ignite it. They shoot forward, something like a hand cannon, but without rocks. The rocket is the missile.
I see. But we don't have black powder in these parts. Nor cannon.
Indeed. It should have occurred to me. But I am very fond of Roquetta, and I always think what Alexander the Great might have accomplished with them. I understand. We find ourselves in a conventional situation that demands a conventional solution.
Afterwards, Lord Divish will request that you find a priest and a physician for the wounded and dying at the camp. You can find these in the form of Priest Goodwin, the same priest you went on a bender with, and Johanka, a Skalitz survivor at the monastery. Once you've finished up doing the side missions around the camp, you'll come back in a few days to find that the trebuchet construction is all finished up, ready for the siege of Talmberg. Upon arriving at the camp, the lords and some guards are all gathered together to fire the first test shot, which ends up falling short of the castle, prompting Kieser to assure everyone that this is normal and that the trebuchet just needs a little bit of calibrating. Soon after, a guard shows up out of breath to warn everyone that there is an army on the way led by Havel Medic, the same guy who kidnapped Sir Divish and held him for ransom to Lady Stephanie, and who is also responsible for raising the village of Pribyslavitz. This could only mean that the army is coming as reinforcements to István Toth, and that you and your men must strike them first. After talking it over for a bit, Divish devises a plan to ambush the army from the front while Henry leads a secondary force to attack from the side. Once you've found the enemy army, you'll have to wait until they initiate combat with Divish's force before springing your own surprise attack. The battle is short and bloody, ending with István's reinforcements being wiped out, preventing them from gathering a larger force to defend the castle with. Once again, a prisoner is captured for interrogation, who turns out to be Eric, István's right-hand man. Soon after Eric's capture, Robard comes sprinting down to alert the men that István's guard are attacking the trebuchet. Henry and the lords follow swiftly behind in defense of their siege weapon. Upon arrival, you'll find dozens of men attacking the guards at the camp, trying to work their way to the trebuchet. Luckily, Henry and his men show up in time to fend off the attack and preserve the siege artillery. After the attack, Henry suggests trying to trade Eric for Radzig and Stephanie, while also suggesting that István and Eric are in a somewhat intimate relationship. Before trying that, Henry will interrogate Eric and find little more information than they already know. Henry suggests the hostage exchange to Eric, who says that it won't work and that István will save him without compromise. Henry asks why István would save Eric as he's just another bandit, suggesting otherwise that the two might be lovers. Eric replies by saying that Henry would never understand. Afterwards, Henry tells Divish and Hanish what Eric said, and they begin to parley with István for an exchange.
What is it? Did our neighbourly visit catch you unprepared?
A little, but we've settled in nicely. And this fellow is enjoying our company so much, we simply can't get rid of him. It seems we are in similar situations. Perhaps it's time to send our respective guests home.
Not a chance. Do you take me for a fucking fool? Be warned. If anything happens to Eric, I'll let every manjack here have his way with this bitch, and I'll dice Kobila into goulash meat.
Nobly spoken, your grace. But for all I know, you may have done that already.
Divish, I'm sorry.
Greetings, friends. Fear not, Lord Toth is treating us like royalty.
They're unharmed, as you can see. But don't try any tricks, or they won't be for long, Hanush.
Following an unsuccessful parley, the lords converse, agreeing that István will never give up his hostages as they are his last safeguard. Divish's men cannot be kept in the camp for a prolonged period of time due to supplies running out, and Sigismund's army will continue its rampage across the countryside, leading them to believe that the only choice left is to siege the castle of Talmberg in hopes of regaining control. Another guard shows up to relay that another army marches to their location, though this time it is led by Margrave Jobst of Moravia, the cousin of Sigismund and King Wenceslas, and he wants to speak with the lords. Hanish recalls that Margrave Jobst was in league with Sigismund just a year ago and now seems to have switched sides, leading the rebellion against Sigismund. The lords decide to begin the attack on Talmberg as soon as the men are rested so that Margrave Jobst might parley with them from within the castle instead of camped outside like some gypsies. Once you've made it back to the camp, you're invited to launch the first shot of the trebuchet. Upon doing so, it lands successfully within the castle, and Divish orders to continue artillery fire until the gates are opened and an attack on foot can be carried out. Speaking with Robard before the attack, he comments on Henry's progress from a peasant blacksmith's son to an accomplished warrior, prompting you to reminisce on your journey beginning as a peasant from Skalitz. Once you're ready, the final battle for Talmberg can commence, beginning with a trebuchet shot to the drawbridge winch, causing it to open and allow an attack. You and dozens of Skalitz men storm the walls with siege ladders, attacking the soldiers on the battlements while Divish and his men secure the yard. Once you've secured the walls, you can make your way to the yard to finish István's men off and win the battle for Talmberg, ending with István barricading himself in the tower with Radzig and Stephanie.
Sir, we should give the order.
Let's see if Istvan Toth can worm his way out of this one.
Don't tempt fate, Hanish.
Istvan! It's over! You want us to come and get you?
I wouldn't advise that. Your friend Divish wants to see his wife alive again.
And Sir Radzig? Are both hostages unharmed?
For now, Hanush, unless circumstances change.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. My guest is also safe and sound, but he's also quite keen to go home. I imagine you feel the same way. It's been a long time since you warmed yourself at your own hearth.
I'm in no hurry. I've plenty of supplies here, grand view and excellent company. What more could I want?
Your freedom!
Freedom? Freedom to get an arrow in the back?
Sir, we're all noblemen here, all bound by honor. I give you my word as a knight and lord, and that of my companions. If you release Lady Stephanie and Sir Radzig, you may leave the castle with your men and go on your way unharmed.
And just how far will we get? What good will it do me if your men attack us in the woods instead of here?
If you give me your word of honor that you will leave and never return, I promise you safe passage to the boundary of this fiefdom. What happens after that is up to you and the will of God Almighty.
Very well then, but I want a small safeguard. I'll give you her ladyship, but Radzig comes with me. I'll release him in Skalitz.
Out of the question! Is our word not good enough for you?
Is mine not good enough for you? I swear I'll release him when I get to a safe distance.
I'll go with him, Hanush. Let the Lady Stephanie have her freedom now.
Father!
Don't worry, son. I trust Lord Toth's self-interest more than his word. He wouldn't be fool enough to harm me.
If you're certain, Radzig.
Prepare horses and supplies, and tell your men to pull back. We'll come down.
After coming to an agreement, Istvan is granted safe passage out of the fiefdom in exchange for Stephanie's immediate freedom and Radzig's freedom to be delivered once Istvan has crossed the fiefdom border. Talmberg is secured, but Istvan makes it away alive and with Henry's sword as well. Following Istvan's release, Capon and Henry set out to follow him to secure Henry's father upon his own release. After acquiring your father, Capon decides to chase after Istvan in order to hunt him down, breaking Hanish's agreement, though Capon says that it's fair game since the agreement only provided safe passage to the border of the fiefdom. Following Capon's departure, Henry and Radzig speak. Henry asks why they didn't kill Istvan upon his release, while Radzig teaches him a lesson about honoring one's word. Without honor, nobles wouldn't be able to be trusted by their people, which would result in anarchy. Henry retorts in asking where the honor is to be found in abandoning your son. Radzig explains that he impregnated Henry's mother and couldn't be with her as he was a noble and she was a peasant, and it would look bad on him. Instead, Radzig entrusted your care to your blacksmith father, who Radzig knew to be a well-respected blacksmith who had traveled the country in countless adventures and fought in a war only to settle down with your mother in a quiet life. He also admits that he had always kept an eye on you and that he had planned on telling you the truth, only he wished it had come from him and not Istvan. Henry laments the loss of Radzig's sword, to which Radzig says that it is now Henry's sword. Radzig says that he fears that the business with Istvan is far from over, which Henry welcomes as a chance to retrieve his sword and seek vengeance for his village. You then both ride on Henry's horse back to Talmberg and the credits roll, beginning the epilogue. After the credits, you'll have a dream of your blacksmith father who has come to tell you how proud he is, regardless of losing the sword, providing the player with another somber moment to dwell on. Afterwards, Capon returns and tells Henry that Istvan couldn't be found, but that Margrave Jobst has arrived and requires the presence of both of them. In Sir Hanish's conference room, Margrave explains the events of the kingdom in detail.
And this is my son, Henry.
I didn't know you had a son, Sir Radzig.
It came as a bit of a surprise to young Henry, too.
This gentleman here is John II of Liechtenstein, a member of my council.
I'm honored, gentlemen.
Come join us. Margrave Jobst was just about to tell us the reason for his visit. Your Grace?
I'm sure we're all agreed, Your Graces, that all this unrest must come to an end. This kingdom needs a king.
Question is, which king?
My cousin, Wenceslas IV, who is being held in captivity.
I have to confess, my lord, that your answer surprises me a little. If I'm correctly informed, until recently you sided with your other cousin, Sigismund.
That I cannot deny, and I have always stated my position plainly. But times have changed.
How have they changed, Your Grace?
Sir, there is one thing on which we undoubtedly concur, that King Wenceslas, unfortunately, did not inherit his father's gift for governing. Sadly, his failures have cost Bohemia, the nobles, and our whole Luxembourg family a great deal of money and effort.
How did the king let it go so far, damn it?
It's in his temperament. He cares only for wine, women, and the hunt. A king, in fact, who never wanted to be king.
Then why didn't he just let his brother have the crown?
Young sir, the crown weighs heavy when there are duties to be performed, but to surrender it means giving up great privileges too.
But he did surrender power to his brother. When things started getting out of hand, Wenceslas appealed to Sigismund for help in restoring order.
What, you're saying Wenceslas invited him here?
This is starting to make my head spin.
Actually, it makes sense when you think about it. Sigismund wanted to re-establish the power of the whole House of Luxembourg. He thought if he helped Wenceslas win the imperial crown, in return his brother would help him become the king of the Romans, and leave the actual reign of Bohemia and the empire to him. Sigismund would govern, while Wenceslas could carry on doing what he was best at, enjoying the life of the imperial court.
Why wasn't Wenceslas crowned Holy Roman Emperor long ago? He was already elected king of the Romans. All he had to do was go and let the Pope put the damn imperial crown on his head.
Who knows? Maybe he'd prefer hunting and consorting with bathhouse wenches to spending time with the Pope.
Well, so would I must admit.
Sigismund's plan seemed sound enough, but it didn't quite work out, did it?
It worked for a while. He and his brother reached an agreement. Sigismund took over administration of the kingdom and began planning Wenceslas's journey to Rome for the imperial coronation. But then Wenceslas realized he would just be a puppet with a crown.
I must say, Margrave Jobst, Wenceslas and Prokop behave rather like naughty children in need of a good clout about the ears.
Sigismund would agree. He was already planning his rule of Bohemia, and all of a sudden, the rug was pulled from under him. I'd say he lost his patience and decided he'd drag Wenceslas to the coronation kicking and screaming if he had to. Just like a naughty child, as you say.
So he abducted him and your brother Prokop too, if I heard correctly.
Correct.
And you helped him do it, if I heard correctly.
Yes, Your Graces, it's true. I was there when Sigismund abducted Prokop. I thought everything could somehow be settled, that we could make my brother see sense. But Sigismund just wanted to put an end to the dispute once and for all, whatever the cost. There was nothing I could do to stop him. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here. The worst of it is that it was all for nothing. Instead of putting a stop to the revolt, it escalated it, and the result is this chaos we have today.
That's true enough, sir. But I must admit now, I'm not sure what your position is. The king is incompetent, but we must protect him?
The simple truth, gentlemen, is that for all of Wenceslas's faults, we have no one else.
So we'll have to make do with his idleness.
People like him, though.
But what can we do now? Sigismund has the League of Lords behind him. Otto von Bergolf, Heinrich von Rosenberg.
The situation has gotten completely out of control. Now even the nobles of the League of Lords are realizing that Sigismund wasn't the right choice.
So now Bergolf is on your side? Are we to assemble an army together with him and face Sigismund on the field of battle?
We're not in Hungary now. Such affairs may be settled elegantly, without unnecessary hostilities or expenses. I have negotiated an alliance with the Hungarian bishops, the Polish, and of course the Czech nobility, against Sigismund. Every day he is losing the ground under his feet, and that's why I need your help too.
What kind of help, though? Sigismund has a massive army, and Rosenberg, Berghof, and Prague are behind him. Do you have an army you could face him with?
But that's not what I mean at all. There's been a revolt against Sigismund in Hungary, partly due to my efforts, and now he'll have to choose whether he wants to gain the Bohemian crown, which is a very risky enterprise, or hold on to the Hungarian one. He can't have both. And there's a tough struggle awaiting him in Hungary. I'm not sure he'll win, and Rosenberg and Berghof know it too. They're not stupid. If the Bohemian nobility stands together, they will turn.
We are men of little consequence, Margrave. Radzig here lost everything because of his alliance with Wenceslas. Sir Divish came within a hair of the same fate. Even Rattay is defenseless against Sigismund and the League of Lords.
What's more, Your Grace, King Wenceslas languishes in captivity in Vienna. He can't rule too well from there.
And what do you propose? To sit with your arms folded till the Bohemian lands are turned to ashes like Skalitz? We have to put a stop to this senseless war!
And do you know, sir, what the true position of the League of Lords is?
I'm not on the best of terms with them at this moment, so you'll have to ask them yourselves.
Yes. Why not? I'll go and visit Berghof at his castle and we'll see what he tells me.
Following the conference with the lords, Hannish and Margrave Jobst draft a letter to send to Berghof at his castle to attain the League of Lords' true position on the war in order to get a better grip on the situation. The letter is written in a way to leave the nobleman's position on the war vague in order to not begin conflict with the League of Lords before knowing their own stance. Once the letter is finished, Hannish asks one final question. Why did Sigismund come as a foe, attacking the fiefdom? Margrave Jobst's scribe is the one to answer, explaining that Hungary is a savage country with hardened men, so when Sigismund heard the beginning of a revolt, he reacted as he would in his own country, attacking with aggression, adding that another reason for raiding Talmberg and Skalitz especially was that Sigismund was running low on funds to keep his army funded, so the silver acquired from the raids would be enough to fill the army's pockets and keep them content. Hannish acknowledges the answer and hands the letter off to the messengers. It is left to Capon and Henry to deliver this letter, which will take around 3 days of riding on horse to deliver and 3 days of riding to return. Once you've finished talking to Radzig and Capon, you may set off immediately. While riding with Capon, you'll both converse about your new life as a noble and the new light that has been shed on the current situation between Sigismund and Wenceslas. Once you've both reached the edge of the map, your journey as Henry in this game will end, leaving a perfect point to pick back up on in the upcoming sequel. Now, with the story thoroughly covered, I'll share my overall thoughts on the game as a shortened review. Aspects of the game that I really enjoyed include the hardcore elements of the game, like the unforgiving but rewarding combat that allows you to loot all of the equipment off of defeating enemies, the manual potion brewing system, which creates a more engaging way of acquiring potions, and the save system, as only being able to save while you've got the Save Your Schnapps potion or sleeping in your own bed forces you to think about when and where to save the game. Another feature that I had a lot of fun with was honing all of my skills from nothing to mastery. It brought me back to the days of playing RuneScape and getting the satisfaction of seeing your levels go up as you progress. There are also a ton of side missions and side content that kept me playing for almost 200 hours, and I'm pretty sure I didn't even complete every mission in the game. Lastly, I liked that the game stuck to its guns when it came to being historically accurate and sticking with the realistic aspects of the game, which allows you to experience the medieval period of Bohemia. The only thing that I did not enjoy about the game was that some missions really broke the pace and made it move very slow at times, A few examples of this would be the entire Woman's Lot DLC being extremely slow and not very enjoyable to me, though I still completed both Teresa and Johanka's missions. Also, the missions toward the end of the game after building the trebuchet, including the campsite missions and the priest/physician retrieval missions, were just thrown in as fluff, which kind of broke up the ending climax. Either way, this game has made it to my top favorite games of all time, up there with Mass Effect, Fallout New Vegas, The Witcher 3, Baldur's Gate 3, and Cyberpunk 2077 in no certain order. I highly recommend playing the game if you somehow haven't already, and especially if you find it on sale. With that being said, we've finally come to the end of the video, which has been 3 months in the making, mostly spent playing the game, but it feels good to finally put this together for you all. If you enjoy this type of video, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. If you've got a game suggestion for my next video, feel free to let me know. Keep an eye out for the next video I'll be making on the sequel once it's released, though I'll probably wait a few months to make a video on it like this one in order to abstain from spoiling the game. Anyways, I've had a great time making this one. Thank you to the returning viewers who are joining me, welcome to those who are new, and as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.